Hi guys, it is Cout and Shaz coming at you once again. So today we are going to go through sun salutations. So sun salutations A and B, also known as Surya Namaskar A and B. So this is used all throughout the practice. Traditionally, it is used as we begin to warm up through the body. So we are going to go through each of the sun salutations and break down the poses for you. So basically it's just a check-in for those of you that are familiar with the practice to see if you're doing it right, to have the correct alignment. And for those of you that are new to the yoga practice, this is also a really great way to get started. It's also a really good workout as well, if done repetitiously. So we are going to get straight into it. So we're going to start at the top of the mat, facing forward. So as we meet, and you can have your toes touching here with a slight gap of the heels, and arms by the sides with the palms facing forward. However, if this does feel a little uncomfortable, you are more than welcome to have your feet hip width distance. And just begin to close down the eyes here. So this pose is mountain pose, Tadasana. And though it may not look like much right now, this is such a powerful pose. And what I really want you to visualize and for you to feel as you stand here is anchoring down through four corners of the feet. So that's the big toe, the pinky toe, and the two corners of the heel. And there's a slight lift of the inner arches. So as you feel that lift as you anchor down, it's almost like you're energetically growing taller through the spine. Like we have a piece of string pulling us up in a nice vertic neutral from the crown of the head. And as we begin to focus now more on our breath, taking an inhale, we rise, growing taller, and on the exhale we anchor down through the feet. So it's working in opposition. We're also energetically pulling down through the fingertips, pulling the kneecaps up via the quads so they're nice and engaged. It's almost as if in this position, if someone tried to move you, you'd be rock solid. So once you find where you need to be in this pose, in your Tadasana, I'm just going to begin to tune a little bit deeper into our breath now. We'll take 3 cycles of breath here. And you may feel a sway-like motion, and that's completely fine. Just feeling into the space of where you are. And on the next inhale, we crack open the eyes and take an inhale breath, and we take our hands to sky. So we take our hands in prayer to begin, and on the exhale, we swan dive forward, belly melts over thighs, meeting in a forward fold. Now in this position, we do want to lengthen through the legs, but if you do need to have a little micro bend to start with, that's completely fine. Belly rests over thighs, head hangs heavy. And you do want to be able to grip something, whether that's the mat. If you do need blocks, I do encourage blocks to start with. If you feel like you cannot reach the mat, And on the next inhale, we come up to rise, lengthening through the spine. Neck is in line with the spine. Eye gaze to the top of the mat. So we're pulling forward with the heart and we're energetically pulling back with the shins. So we want to have our hips over our heels in this position. One more breath. Inhale. Exhale to fold once again. One breath. Inhale, halfway lift. Okay. So we'll step back into a high plank now. So I'm going to step back with the left foot. Taking that back. So we meet in a lunge and then we frame the front foot moving into our high plank position. So in high plank, we want to make sure we have a shoulder width distance of the palms. So all 10 fingers are equally spread. We have some suppleness in the elbows here. I have a tendency to hyperextend, so that's super important for me, for my double jointed friends out there. I know that there are some of you out there. So we're going to shift those heels back, dropping the hips but drawing the navel towards the spine, holding here, pushing the earth away, and we move into Chaturanga. So I'm going to take the modified version first. So we slowly lower down, dropping the knees, and we're in this position where we've got bent elbows, where the elbows are in line with the wrists, hugging the elbows in and slowly lowering down to our bellies. So our hands should be at the base of our rib cage, extending the legs out long. Just take a breath here. And on the next inhale, keeping those elbows hugged in, still pushing that earth away, we'll come up to a slight lift of the chest just above the navel for easy cobra. Take a deep in-breath here. Exhale, release. Let's do one more of those. Inhale to rise. And you can come up a little bit more this time. Exhale. And take a breath here. Keeping the hands and the elbows hugged in as they are. Tucking the toes now. Coming up via the knees or pushing up through high plank. We'll meet in our first downward facing dog. Okay, so if you need to readjust here, that's completely fine. So we want to have our feet hip width distance and we want to have our heels drawing down. And it's okay if they do not reach the mat, that's completely fine. And our hands are in the same place. So they're still shoulder width distance. We're still equally spreading our fingers across the mat, really firming down with the index finger and the thumb. And our heart is melting towards our shins. Generous bend in the knees here if you need it. Breathing in and out through the nose. And on the next in-breath, we'll come up high on the ball mounts of both feet. And our eye gaze will turn to the top of the mat. And to begin with, we're going to walk to the top of the mat. So we want to walk to the back of our hands. So a couple of options here. To start with, you can simply tiptoe all the way to the top of the mat, or you can try with extended legs without bending, walking to the top of the mat without lifting the palms. And this is a really good exercise to learn. Take as slow as you need to. And eventually those palms will lift once you reach the top of the mat, and we'll meet back in our halfway lift. Hold. Exhale, fold. Head hangs heavy. And on the next inhale, we slowly come up to rise, upward hands. Hands in prayer, slight back bend. Exhale, Hands in prayer, Samasthiti, thumbs to sternum, and that is one round of Surya Namaskar. Okay, so we're going to go through that again, but this time we're going to introduce the full version of Chaturanga, and we'll also introduce upward facing dog as well. So starting back in our Tadasana, so you can have hip width distance with the feet, or if it was more comfortable for you to have the big toes to touch and a slight gap of the heels, completely up to you. Closing down the eyes or a soft gaze, whatever you prefer. Setting up your strong foundation in your mountain pose. So you really want to be drawing that tailbone down so those hip bones slightly come forward. It's almost like an in-between an anterior and a posterior tilt. So not completely forward. So we just want to tuck that tailbone. Take one breath here. Inhale, breath. Eyes open, hands in prayer. Exhale, swan dive forward, forward fold, also known as Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. And this time we step that right foot back. Coming through our low lunge, moving through high plank. Now it is time, as we shift forward just over the wrists, to come into our Chaturanga. So you want about a block width distance from the mat and the chest. So about here. And we're going to hold here. And you're more than welcome to stay with easy cobra and lower all the way down. Or you roll over the toes, upward facing dog. Now with upward facing dog, we really want to activate the thighs here, so we're still engaging the quads by pulling the kneecaps up. Our thighs are off the mat, pushing the earth away, still softness in the elbows, eye gaze forward. And we'll take one more breath here. Inhale. Exhale, roll over the toes, and we're back in downward facing dog. Reset if you need to. And downward facing dog almost becomes a resting pose between these transitions, and it might not feel like it at first, but once you get the hang of it and you begin to do these regularly, you'll know what I mean. So always just checking in with your foundation of the pose and checking in with your quality of mind and breath. And just allowing the breath to settle. On the next inhale, we come up high on the ball mounts at the feet, eye gaze forward, and we will walk to the top of the mat. So you can tiptoe, or you can take the variation we did at the beginning of practice, straightening the legs and walking to the back of the hands without lifting the palms, and then meeting in a halfway lift. Ardha Uttanasana. Neck is an extension of the spine. Exhale to fold. Inhale, come up, reset, hands in prayer. Slight back bend. Exhale, and take that prayer pose down to the sternum. And we meet back where we began in mountain pose. So that is round 2. Stepping it up a notch now. So we're going to connect to all the dots, and please feel free to stay with easy cobra throughout the flow if you need to. It's always there for you, or if you want to continue to take upward facing dog, I'll be cueing that. But we are going to do the jump through and the jump back. So I will explain a little bit more in depth what that is once we get into it. So let's start where we began. However you'd like your feet. I'm going to take mine hip width distance this time, anchoring down, palms facing forward. Inhale, breath, upward hands. Exhale to fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Okay, so for the jump back, what we want to do is, it is a lot easier to have the palms flat, framing the feet, or you can always have them just in front of the feet. Whatever you prefer. I do find a little bit easier by the feet, so by the pinky toes. And as we bend the knees and bend the elbows, so you want to make that belly and thigh connection, is that when we land, I see a lot of people in the practice, and this is not how you do it, but I'll quickly demonstrate. They jump back and their hips sag, or they come all the way to the ground. That's not what we want. So what we want to do with the jump back from halfway lift is that we plant the hands down, bend through the knees, and we want to land with bended elbows, not straight arms, so we want to protect the elbow joints. Inhale, exhale, heels shift back, roll over the toes, upward facing dog. And it's okay, it's going to take a few goes to get that. I know it took me a few goes. A lot of splat action happening with that. Belly flops. So holding in your upward facing or your easy cobra for one more breath. Drawing those heels in towards one another if you're in upward facing. Exhale, roll over the toes. Downward facing dog. Let's take a few breaths here, reset, check in with your foundation. And every time we move into downward facing dog, it will feel different as we begin to get warmer and our muscles loosen. Let's take one more breath here. And on the next inhale, we're going to take our eye gaze forward, and we have two options for the jump through. So I think the best way to start is by bringing the big toes together. Coming up high, high heels, eye gaze forward. And when we bend through the knees, we want to either reach the back of the hands or in between the hands. So I think what we'll aim for is the back of the hands. So take that in breath, momentum, exhale, halfway lift. And try and land as softly as possible. Exhale to fold. Inhale to rise. Hands in prayer, hands to heart center. Reset. Okay, so we're going to go through one more round, putting all of that together. I'm going to go a little bit faster now. So readjust yourself if you need to come closer to the top of the mat. Set your feet, meeting in Tadasana. Inhale, breath, upward hands. Exhale to fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Option to practice the jump back, or if you're happy to step back, it's completely up to you. Upward facing or easy cobra. Holding here, eye gaze forward. Rolling over the toes. Downward facing dog. And it becomes very fluid once you connect all the pieces together. And it becomes so nourishing. I just love sun salutations. Coming up high on the heels. Now this time, if you want to keep the feet hip width distance apart for the jump through, same momentum, same motion, bending through the knees, slight bend of the elbows, and we jump. Meeting in a halfway lift. Exhale to fold. Inhale, rise. Exhale, hands to heart center. dropping the hands. And we open the eyes if they're not so already. So that is Surya Namaskar A. So that is always done, as the name implies, before Surya Namaskar B. So we are going to go through B now. So it does incorporate a lot of the same poses. We're just adding a couple of poses in there. They are a little bit more challenging, but we will break them down for you as well. So the first one is Utkatasana, chair pose. So it is a famous pose. It's also known as fierce pose, and you'll see why the longer that you're in it. So let's get straight to it. So for the start of Surya Namaskar B, we always start with Utkatasana. So we have that solid foundation that we have formed from our Tadasana. We bring the big toes to touch, slight gap of the heels, and we begin to bend through the knees so the thighs are parallel to the floor, shifting the weight into the heel as our hands rise to sky. And also, I'll quickly say, a quick way to measure where you should be in your chair is if you take your hands to the back of the room and sweep the mat. So once you sweep with your fingertips and where your knees are bent, that's where you want to stay. So we roll the sitting bones under, and we really want to avoid that duck butt situation. So make sure we've got that tailbone drawing down, eye gaze forward, energetically reaching, climbing to the sky with the fingertips, 3 breaths. And you almost want to feel like you're lifting your toes up off the earth here. 1 more breath. Exhale, release, forward fold. Catching your breath here. Inhale, halfway lift. And we're going to step the left foot back to start. So going through what we call a Vinyasa. So high to low plank, Chaturanga. Option to go with your easy cobra or upward facing dog, whatever you prefer. Exhale, downward facing dog. Reset. So we're moving into Virabhadrasana 1, which is Warrior 1. So starting on our left side, we're going to come up high on the ball mounts of the feet. So we're going to tuck that left knee into our chest as we shift forward. So our shoulders are over our wrists. And on the exhale, we step the foot between the palms. So we're in a low lunge. Before we do anything else, we're going to pivot that back foot on a 45-degree angle. So that right foot is going to plug into the back of the mat. So we have heel to heel or heel to arch alignment. And you can come up via the hips just to feel nice and stable. So we want to square the hips off in this pose. It's not an open hip pose, it's a closed hip pose. So once you feel comfortable where you are, we want a nice strong back leg. So pulling up that quad via the kneecap. So we want a Tadasana back foot. So all 4 corners of the back foot, slight lift of the inner arch. And we've got that left knee bending. Nice generous bend. So that left knee is tracking over that left ankle. And then we take our hands to sky. So I really encourage you to close down your eyes here in Vira 1. And if you're finding a little uncomfortable in any of these sensations, what I'd like you to do is visualize your pose, the Warrior 1, as a living and breathing thing. So on your inhale, you grow taller, and on your exhale, you melt deeper. And if there's any adjustments that you need to make, just take them. You're more than welcome to move around, to shift around. I want you to feel comfortable in this pose. And when you're ready, you can open the eyes and you can take classical Warrior 1 by closing the palms together, and perhaps the eye gaze looks to your thumbs. And on the exhale, we circle sweep the hands, framing the front foot. That back foot goes back to neutral in your low lunge. We step that left foot to meet the right, and then we go through our vinyasa. High to low, upward facing dog, or if you're still with cobra, exhale, downward facing dog. Straight into the second side. So we come up high on the ball mounts of the feet. We tuck that right knee into chest, shift forward, shoulders over wrists. Exhale, step that right foot between the palms. And before we do anything else, we pivot that back foot to that 45-degree angle, plugging it in, and slowly come up. So if you're ready to go straight into upward hands, please feel free. And always remember to make any adjustments you need to make in the warrior poses. Whew. So we want internal rotation of the left thigh here. So feel like that inner thigh is really wrapping in as you ground down through that left foot. And if the visualization before helped and you'd like to close your eyes, please do so. Allowing the breath and the pose to intertwine and work as one. Or perhaps taking the eye gaze to the hands, hands in prayer. One more breath. Exhale, circle sweeping. Framing that front foot back to neutral, and going through your vinyasa. Upward facing dog. Downward facing dog. Okay guys, we're just going to take 5 cycles of breath in our down dog. And you might be understanding a little more now why this is what I like to call a resting pose. So just always taking this time to reconnect with yourself. Perhaps where your mind has gone, if it's wandered away, bringing it back to the room, to the space, to the breath, to the practice. One more breath. And on the next inhale, we come up high. The ball mounts of the feet, eye gaze forward, and up to you if you want to jump or step to the top of the mat. I'm going to take the jump. Meeting in a halfway lift. Exhale to fold. And if the big toes aren't already touching, bringing them together to close our Surya Namaskar B the way we started, by taking the hands to the back of the room. And as we shift forward, we bend through those knees, thighs parallel to the earth, shifting the weight into the heels. Tailbone draws down. Utkatasana chair pose. 3 breaths here. Last breath, you've got this. And then on the next inhale, come to stand. Taking those hands down by our sides, palms face forward, and we are back in Tadasana, mountain pose. Let's just take a moment. You're more than welcome to keep the eyes open, or if you'd like to close them, just to feel whatever it is you're feeling. Allowing the heart rate to settle. And gently taking your hands together in prayer pose, thumbs to sternum. Slight bow of the head. And bowing our heads to the practice that cultivates peace and that has brought us all here together today to learn from one another. Thumbs to third eye center. Namaste.
Namaste. Fucking do it. Just when the dogs started barking. Let's just take a minute till those dogs fucking calm their farm, shall we?
All right.